please.
Alderman Cameron.
Here.
Alderman Anderson.
Here.
Alderman Morgan Adams.
Here.
Alderman Dash.
Here.
Alderman Dolick.
Here. Please stand for the pledge. Okay. Approval of the minutes. I need a motion to approve the November 25th, 2024 City Council regular meeting minutes.
So moved, Anderson.
Second, Cameron.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Alderman Cameron.
Aye.
Alderman Anderson.
Aye.
Alderman Morgan Adams.
Aye.
Alderman Dash.
Aye.
Alderman Dolick.
Aye.
Motion passes. I'm going to move item 5A, the proclamation, up. Although I'm sure you guys would love to hear about our actuarial report and what's going on at the airport, but I'll let you guys go first so that you don't have to listen to that. I'm not even a fan of listening to that, so we have. So I'm going to do the proclamation. You guys want to stand up? Come up here and stand in the line? Like right behind the podium. There you go. I'll read it. This is a City of Prospect Heights proclamation honoring Illinois Pop Warner 9U state champions, Arlington Heights and Prospect Heights 9U Dogs. Whereas the Dogs football program in just its second year of existence brings together young athletes from Arlington Heights and Prospect Heights, has cultivated a winning culture centered around hard work, discipline, and most importantly, character. And whereas win with character has been the guiding motto of the Dogs from its initiation, enabling athletes to excel in their athletic skills, but also in the values of teamwork, respect, and sportsmanship. Whereas the Dogs youth football team is helping to build a strong foundation for the future of local football, providing strong, character-driven athletes to area high school football programs. And whereas on November 2nd, 2024, at Plunkett Park, Elmhurst, the Arlington Heights and Prospect Heights 9U Dogs won the 2024 Illinois Pop Warner 9U Championship. And whereas the state championship is a testament to hard work and dedication of every player, coach, and family involved, now therefore be it proclaimed that the City of Prospect Heights recognizes and congratulates all the athletes, coaches, parents, families, and supporters who have contributed to the Arlington Heights and Prospect Heights 9U Dogs Championship season and their continued commitment to teamwork, respect, and sportsmanship, dated this 9th day of December, 2024. Do I remember you from what? Oh, from school? Yeah. Now that you say that.
I can move. Pat, you want me to move?
Anything else? All right. So here, let's stand here. You guys pay attention. So All right, perfect camera. Thanks, camera. If they could come here close.
Okay, so let's do this.
Take control.
Stand back, or a little bit. Look, Mom.
You're talking.
Yeah, he's here.
Just scooch in a little bit, just a bit more. Got it?
On three, say dogs. 1, 2, 3.
Happy holidays, guys. Happy holidays. Oh, that's awesome. That's what I do before to my grandson.
Yeah. I wasn't sure how many kids, coaches, so.
Thank you guys, that's really.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time, guys. Appreciate it. I'm like, you need a mom.
Yeah, I've got pictures.
Okay, so where are we? Presentations. Prospect Heights Police Pension Board, presentation by Police Pension Board Trustee Tom Hulting. Thank you, Tom. Good evening.
Quite a presentation. They know how to make an exit as
They
well.
do.
You know what, it really reminds us of why we're all here.
That's right.
It's for families, for them, for the future.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
That's really good stuff, and I appreciate you doing that for them. It's a memorable experience. So I'm here to make a presentation about status and activity of the police pension plan. I made a presentation about a year ago, and at the conclusion of that presentation, the group decided it was worthwhile if we do a periodic update. And so we thought a periodic on an annual basis made more sense. So I'm here. So if you recall, last year, I presented a relatively negative or somber view of where we were at with respect to the police pension plan regarding its funding status and its near-term outlook. However, in keeping with the festive holiday atmosphere, I'm here to present a more positive upbeat note with regards to the plan. And why is that? Two reasons. Number one, investment performance of the assets. And more importantly, and number two, it's because of the support that you, as the city council members, had shown the police and made a substantial contribution to the plan last year. Last year, the city stepped up and made a very, very significant contribution path through your leadership and the rest of the support of the city council to the tune of about $3.2 million. That went a long way to bringing up the funded status of the plan. For all intents and purposes, we're like at 70% funded status right now. Last year, we were talking, pretty low 60s. So that is fantastic in news, and I appreciate the leadership that you have all shown into the plan. First thing I'd like to do is acknowledge the trustees of the pension plan. So we have two active police members. They're on the trustees of the pension plan. Kevin Lang, Brian Sixworth, one retired member, Scott Minier, and then Bill Kearns and myself are the city-appointed trustees of the plan. And I also would like to acknowledge why we're all here and talking about the police pension plan. There are 22 active members of the police force. They're supported by this plan. There are 25 inactive members. Of those 25 inactive members, 21 are currently receiving benefits. So the plan is in supporting 50 families, and we're here to make sure we honor the city's commitment to those members, both currently active as retired. Joe, I'm going to ask you, did you include in the package, there's a handful of schedules that I attached, is that in the
Yes.
package?
Yes.
Okay. So what I'd like to do is just, I'm going to do a quick overview on a few things. I'm going to highlight a couple of points, and then I'm going to have our actuary come and make a little bit more of a robust presentation. So I'm a retired CPA, so I talk numbers, and so I like to have schedules in front of me when I talk about facts. And so if you can, look at Exhibit 1, which is the current funded status of the plan. And I've trended this over the last 7 years.
So this is at the end, this is like a page that you would have made?
That's right, yeah, it's called funded status, Joe. I don't know if you recall putting those in the packet. If you don't have it in front of me, I can just...
Historical trend analysis? Okay,
It's
so
the funded
it's,
status.
it's the first page at the end of the report.
Yeah. So again, right now, well, as when we did this actuarial report, which is end of April, and I'll just preface by saying this, when you're doing actuarial studies, there's always a delay in when they perform the analysis as of the date of the work. This data is at the end of April, and at the end of April of 2024, we were about 70% funded. As of today, well, as of the end of April, the assets of the plan are now 26.5 million due to really strong performance of the plan assets. We all know the stock market has done very well. The timing of the contribution as well, because now we were able to enjoy the benefit of the last 6 months of return. So again, win-win for everyone. But I will tell you, one thing that we have certainty about with respect to the plan is that our actuarial obligations are going to continue to grow, right? Because as we have, additional service provided by the police officers as well as the march time. So we're going to, obviously, we need to be very committed to making ongoing contributions to the plan so we don't reverse the progress we made over the past year. Excuse me, I'm going to turn this thing on. And I'd like to also remind the group that under current Illinois statute, the plan is required to be 90% funded by the year 2030. So we have some time to get there, but to get from 70 to 90% will require commitment on behalf of the city. Page 2, or Exhibit 2, is sort of an interesting analysis that I just want to highlight. What this does is roll forwards the plan assets from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, highlighting the city contributions, member benefits, and then investment income. Ultimately, what, as a fiduciary of the plan, one of the objectives would be is that the investment returns on the plan assets should at least equal the plan benefits. We achieved that last year. That's the first time we achieved that in a long time. But as a goal, we probably should want to achieve that on a consistent basis, right? So that the contributions we're making are going to fund future obligations, and the returns on the assets are to pay current retiree benefits. If you would notice, in the prior 5 years, the member benefits, those are the benefits that we're paying to the retirees, were greater than the city contributions. We don't need to revisit history, But that was one of the reasons why we found ourselves in a reduced funding status. And then lastly, relative to the, again, high-level summary of fund activity, I look to Exhibit 3 then, which summarizes the recommended contributions by our actuary versus the city contributions. Last year, LNA was recommending a contribution of 1.6. The city actually contributed 3.2, again contributing to the significant increase in the funding status of the plan. Interestingly, and I'd like to make this point, so much of the required contributions that LNA is recommending is for past service costs. And by that I mean is that the services that were performed in prior years, we were not making the appropriate contributions. If in fact the fund was funded and we were paying or contributing to the plan in the amounts equivalent to the current service costs, the contribution this year would only be $300,000. I mean, think about that. It's like the fact that we weren't making contributions for all these years is now requiring us to make substantial catch-up contributions. If we had been making those contributions, we'd only be talking about $300,000 contribution. It's the numbers are staggering. But I'll put that out there and let that sink in. It's like, shit, you know. We can't do anything about that now, Pat, but the numbers are pretty big. What I'd like to do now then is have Kevin Kavanaugh from LNA, who is our plans actuary, come up and do a short presentation about his actual analysis. But before he does that, again, I want to come back and say thank you to this body for the strong commitment that you've made to the plan. And I'll then now turn it over to...
Just before you start, just a couple things on what you had said.
Yeah.
I took some time to compare ourselves to
Oh,
towns
you
around
made a
us.
lot bigger print than I did.
Yeah, I have to have big
You
print.
guys have to speak really bad.
But as far as our fundedness of the towns around us, Arlington Heights, Prospect Heights, Glenview, Wheeling, Palatine, Northbrook, Mount Prospect, and Des Plaines, using the state's, who is their actuary? Right, but just using their numbers. Sometimes the fundedness, I mean, there are 8 different ways you can claim a fundedness of a fund. And so my assumption is if I grab any one of them, it's going to show the same ratio of what you are funded compared to your neighbors. Close enough, right? I mean, but Arlington Heights is 87% funded based on the state's yearly run of their minimum requirements that they need. We were 76%. So Glenview was 74, Wheeling was 70, Palatine 66, Northbrook 61, Mount Prospect 61, and Des Plaines is 49. I say that not to toot our horn that we're higher, but we did jump a lot. But I mean,
You're absolutely right, and that's I'm much more.
But the other part that's important to this is every one of those communities, I believe every one of them, I know Arlington Heights does because I checked before I came here. We do this based on a $400,000, $430,000 property tax collection for police pension. Arlington Heights collects $12 million in property tax for police pension and police protection. So we are unusual in that they're able to fund theirs through their property tax. We do it through sales tax, places for eating tax, a lot of things. So when we have a good year, we will always try and overfund it if we can't overfund it from the standpoint of that individual year. But that's why it's not as easy for us to do because we don't have that set of
Pat, one thing I would point out though, when we were doing this investigation last year of what the proper contribution should be to the plan, we did do a survey of surrounding municipalities as well. There seems to be some inconsistencies in terms of how the municipalities report. Some municipalities were reporting using the statutory actuarial analysis, and others were using a more conservative analysis like we used in our presentation. So there may be some apples and oranges. I'm only
Right.
cautioning you on the integrity of the data maybe.
Right, no, I'm using the state of Illinois' police pension website where it's the same report prepared by, is it Foster and Foster? Foster and Foster.
Okay.
So they
Sometimes
prepare a
they
universal
report it
report
in
for
their
everybody.
financial report is different than what's
Right,
actually.
yeah, the CAFR might say something that's not equal
Yeah.
to somebody else's
Yeah.
because they use a different methodology.
That's right.
But I tried to use a similar one, but those are my only 2 points, is that we
Yeah.
are making progress and that, our percent of our required contribution, or what we should be putting in as a revenue source, is just not as big as theirs.
It's tough.
It's tough.
But we recognize that,
Right.
and that's why I really came back and you guys really stepped up and
Right.
took care of some short-sightedness on prior administrations, let's put it that way. I will ask Kevin to address the statutory actuarial analysis compared to the analyses that we use as part of this analysis, because it's important to understand the pros and cons of the different approaches. So thank you again. Kevin, and then I'll turn to, he has it on PowerPoint, so we'll be able to see it up on the screen as well.
All right, thank you to the City Council for having me here this evening, and I'll kind of give you guys a quick summary of this year's actuarial evaluation presentation. Pass around copies you guys should have in front of you. It's also in your meeting packet, also on the screen, so pick your pleasure on that. Try to keep it almost as fun as the football team tonight. So turning to that first page in the presentation, that'll show you the key result here, which is the recommended contribution. So when I say the recommended contribution, this is based on the actuarial evaluation for the fiscal year ended April 30, 2024. So that's when we gather data as well as financial information. And ultimately, we would expect this contribution amount to be received by the pension fund during the fiscal year ended April 30, 2026. So sometime between May 1, 2025 to April 30, 2026. To ultimately see these dollars come in if the city was to contribute at the full recommended contribution level. So that amount for this year, the current valuation is $1,585,280. You'll notice year over year that recommended amount has actually gone down by approximately $40,000, or about 2.5%. So not too often you're going to see a reduction, and I'll show you why that was in a minute, mainly due to the city's additional contribution this past year to the fund. You'll see the total fair value of assets. That's how much the pension fund holds in assets as of April 30, 2024, $24,458,900. That's up significantly year over year. And ultimately, when we determine the unfunded liability, we're just taking the difference between the accrued liability and the actuarial value of assets. That's that $10,244,000. Theoretically, if you wanted to get the pension fund to 100% funded overnight, that's what it would take, about $10.2 million. That translates to this year, your funded percent being 71% funded on an actuarial value basis, or 69% on a fair value basis. And to the mayor's point, absolutely, there's like 6 different ways you could look at funded percent. So this is just one way to look at it. Turning to that next slide on page 3, this is going to detail out the different factors that led to ultimately the reduction in this year's recommended contribution. So this year we expected to see an increase there at the top. You know, the expected change, recommended contribution impact, we have a $52,800 increase. That's what we would have expected to see. We did observe salary increases greater than expected for the police officers this year, so that led to about a $16,000 increase there. Actuarial experience was all the demographic changes during the year, which was a $21,400 increase. Investment returns, less than expected. So keep in mind, so during this fiscal year, ended April 30, 24, the fund's return was greater than expected. This is based on an actuarial value of assets, which smooths out the returns over a 5-year period. So on a 5-year average, the fund's returns about 5.3% versus the expected rate of 6.5% on that return on investments. So that's why you see the $15,000 increase there. And then finally, and the really big driver of the decrease this year is contributions greater than expected. So just to kind of go over the numbers there, this year the city contributed during the fiscal year ended 4/30/24 to the pension fund about $3.28 million. The recommended contribution from April 30, 22 that we would compare that against was about $1,443,000. So to Tom's point, the city really stepped up this year in a big way, contributing over 220% of the recommended contribution. And so what that does now is it kind of helps this escalating pension cost. It helps to mitigate that a little bit this year, and that's why we see the reduction in the contribution. Turning to that next slide on page 4, that's going to show you the 2 pieces that make up the recommended contribution, and Tom alluded to this as well. You'll see the first piece there, the employer normal cost for the current valuation is $296,093. Really, the way to think about that, that's the cost of ongoing benefit accrual for all your active police officers. The fundamental idea there is putting that money aside today into the fund through future investment growth will eventually pay the members benefits that they have accrued during this fiscal year that just passed. So that's about 20% or about a fifth of the recommended contribution. The other significant portion is paying off that unfunded liabilities, that $10.2 million we talked about. That's being financed using a 15-year layered amortization period, meaning that different pieces of that unfunded liability are paid off over a different number of years. If we were to kind of simplify it and say, what does that mean? Like, how long would it take to be 100% funded based on this contribution? Basically, in under 10 years, so about 9.6 years, we would project the fund to be fully funded if the city can keep up with these recommended contributions each year. On page 5, this will show you all the demographic changes that were occurred during the year. So I won't dwell on this too much, but we saw 1 new hire, 1 retirement, a couple terminations, and then all the members who were collecting benefits continued to collect, so nobody passed away this year. Page 6 will show you for your active members, their age of service with the fund. And then towards the bottom right there, we've got that bordered off section. Oh, I forgot to advance my slides here, sorry. Towards the bottom right, we've got that bordered off section. Anyone that falls within that bordered off portion is going to be retirement eligible. So what this tells us is that as of April 30, 2024, you have 1 member of the pension fund who's eligible to retire at their discretion.
Is this, just a quick question, is this an unusual ratio of tier 2 to tier 1?
Yeah, good question. So at the very bottom right, well, really in each box, there's 2 numbers. So the number on the left of the vertical line is going to be your tier 1 head count. To the right is tier 2. And then at the very bottom right, you can see the overall count within the fund. So you have 2 tier 1 members, 20 tier 2. So your fund is basically almost all tier 2 members in terms of those active members accruing benefits. And what that means when I say tier 2, for those who might not be as familiar, is anyone hired after January 1, 2011 enters the pension fund as a tier 2 recipient of benefits. Their tier 2 benefits are less rich than tier 1 benefits. There is a lot of talk right now at the state level about potentially improving tier 2 benefits. Nothing definitive at this point in time. So we'll keep our eyes on that going forward. But it is something to be cognizant of, especially for your pension fund being so heavily balanced towards tier 2 members. If the state does decide to improve tier 2 benefits for police officers, it's going to impact your fund pretty substantially, given that that's really all of your active members almost, with the exception of 2 of them.
Interesting.
Page 7 will show you for the pension fund, you get your active and inactive member head count. So Tom already touched on this, but you have 22 active members, 25 inactive. Last year, the fund paid out just over $1.5 million in benefit payments. In 10 years from now, our best estimate, the fund will be paying out almost $2.5 million in benefit payments each year. Page 8 will show you the change in assets for the pension fund during the year. We started the fund, had about $20.6 million in assets, ended as of April 30, 2024, up almost $4 million. So really good year between the city's contribution and investment earnings. Just really a banner year in terms of growth for the fund. You can see the return on investments disclosed in the text box to the right came in at 8.47% for the fiscal year. The expected rate of return is 6.5%. So that puts you about 2% above expectation. Next slide there on page 9, we've got our risk management comments. So these are some factors we look at just to assess the overall health of the fund. This tells us if there's any specific factors to be looking for in terms of risks. So the first metric we look at, we compare the assets the pension fund holds as of April 30 against inactive liability. So just think like any current retired members, disabled members, surviving spouses, and so on. So there is a shortfall there. It's about a $6 million shortfall. And that really means that that becomes the primary objective of the new money coming into this fund, is allocating the dollars to cover all your inactive members that are currently receiving benefits or entitled to receive benefits shortly. The next priority is then funding up future members' benefit accrual. So again, as Tom mentioned, and this is a really big one, and almost say, like pat yourself on the back to the city for this, is that this is the first year, this next bullet point, the ratio of benefit payments to the fair value of assets, 6.32%. That's less than your expected return on investments. That's a great position to be in. That basically means that if you look at the total pension fund, About 6.3% of those dollars are used to pay benefit payments on an annual basis, but the fund's expected to earn 6.5% on investments. So that puts you in a nice expected growth position, meaning the growth on investments should cover your benefit payments for a given year. So that means all that new money coming into the fund, the city's contributions, as well as the active members contributing into the fund, that's really funding future benefit accrual. So that's a good position to be in. And that's gone down a lot. Last year, that same number was 7.17%. So to see that drop down to 6.32 is really significant. And right now, it's shown at the bottom there, we use a 6.5% expected rate of return on investments for the fund. Pretty good conservative assumption to use there. Page 10 is a 5-year history, so this comes from our GASB 6768 report. This will end up in the city's financial statements in the audit. This just shows you how much the city contributed each year compared against what the recommended contribution was, trued up for timing by using a 2-year look back. So you'll see this year, obviously a massive contribution from the city side, 3.28 million, compared against the recommended amount, which is 1.4. So that's about almost 228% of the recommended contribution that was deposited into the fund this past year. You can see that more than makes up for the shortfall from the prior year, which we saw was about 52%. And that brings your 5-year average up to 113%. So that's basically means on average the city contributes, particularly because of this past year, over the last 5 years, 113% of the recommended amount that we come forth as your actuary. And ultimately then that results in another very favorable result for the city, which is page 11. This is called the solvency test. So what this is an 80-year projection of cash flows for the fund. And when we run this model, we assume, I keep forgetting to advance slides, sorry about that. We assume that the city continues to contribute as they have over the past 5 years. So because now your 5-year average has jumped up to that 113%, this is the first year, pleased to report that the fund is projected to be fully solvent. That means that based on your current fund membership and expected future contributions, the fund should be able to pay out every dollar that is promised in benefit payments to all of the current active members to the fund. So now, that just to stress that really going forward, keeping up with the recommended contributions is the best thing that the city can do to help to keep costs low in the long run for taxpayers, and pretty much avoiding that statutory minimum contribution. Even the firm Foster & Foster that produces the statutory minimum would say, this is not a sound funding policy to the pension fund, and you really want to look towards more of a recommended amount from a private actuary targeting 100% funding as we've done here today. So with that being said, happy to answer any questions if the council has any.
Thank you. You explained it very well. Thank you so much.
Quick question.
Yeah.
I always got questions.
Of course.
But if we go back to the slide about the demographics, the age distribution,
Yeah.
because they are so clustered, they appear to be clustered towards the beginning part of that slide. When you said that we could be fully funded in 10 years if we paid the required amount that you guys come up with versus Foster & Foster, does that take in consideration of like this anomaly of this many people that are going to be going out at the same time?
Yeah, great question. To some extent, yes. To some extent, no. So it does take into account all these members that are in the fund. What could be potentially like a driving factor to then spike up future contributions is, let's say every one of these members, the day they're eligible to retire, is right out the door and goes to retire. That's generally going to result in an increased cost because now it's a little bit more in benefits than we expected. The way we project it, we assume probability of retirement starting at year 1 of retirement eligibility and then moving forward to age 65. So for the most part, yes, if these members kind of retire as expected, then yeah, you'd be right on track. But if something happens unexpected, or say a bunch of members become disabled or something tragic like that, that could then potentially increase costs and then extend your funding. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions?
There's one. Kevin, the choice that municipalities have traditionally had between the Department of Insurance number and the private actuary, that used to be pretty close. That gap has widened, and I think there's a misunderstanding among municipalities, and that, through my own experience. Could you explain the difference? Because when we, in municipalities, there's human nature involved. You look at it very closely, you have a choice, and you go to the lesser number, and then that just sets you back further and further. Could you kind of give us a sense that it's a little bit of a false choice?
Yeah, definitely. So, at the state level, the statutory minimum funding policy has changed a lot over the years. As of right now, statutory minimum funding policy is to be at least, basically you have to contribute an amount at least enough to target to be 90% funded by the year 2040. There's nothing magical about 2040, and there's nothing magical at all about 90% funded. But that is just really what current state statute is. And even the underlying methodology in calculating liability is called projected unit credit. It's really not for these pension funds we work with. It's not really an ideal methodology either, because it backloads the cost to the end of a member's working career. So in the private sector, projected unit credit makes sense because turnover rates are so high, right? So it's like, we don't need to fund this member's pension benefit if they're promised this benefit. Because the odds that they're going to be here 25 years from now are like little to none, right? Versus with these pension funds, these fire and police pension funds that we work with, I mean, the odds a member comes in at day one, the odds they're going to retire eventually with an Article 3 or 4 pension fund are incredibly high. That is going to be their career for the longevity of that career. So one of the differences that we use is we use entry age normal methodology. That spreads out costs much more evenly throughout a member's working career. It helps to just not create a situation where you have this escalating cost that skyrockets into like nearly infinity once you reach 2040. Another thing too is that under the state's method, this 90% by 2040, that's the current law. Before that it was 90% funded by 2033. And before that, I think it was 2020. And it's kind of had several iterations of being continually extended. And that tends to be what we're observing at the state level. And that tends to be probably the direction they'll continue to move in on a going forward basis. All signs would indicate such. So by doing that, essentially what you're doing is you're funding a pension fund really less than what is needed, because you're ignoring 10% of that unfunded liability that at some point in time does need to come in and be funded into the pension fund. And then really every time the period gets short, like it is now, we're getting close to 2040, or closer than we've ever been in terms of statutory minimum policy, then they come in and extend it. So what it does is it creates a situation where you've just reached a point in paying that statutory minimum where maybe this year or maybe last year might have been the first year that the fund ever, if you made that statutory minimum contribution, you'd be paying just a little bit more than interest on unfunded liability. Meaning that maybe your funded status would go up like 0.1% by making that statutory minimum contribution. Now with the recommended then you extend it, right? Then you say, oh, let's add 10 more years. Now you're in a situation where for the next 10 years, you're paying less than interest on unfunded liability. So you might, as a city, say, oh, we can make this smaller contribution amount. Well, guess what? Next year, your funded status will be lower and the contribution will be higher. So it doesn't really achieve that long-term objective of getting money into the fund so that it can grow. And then with interest, it can cover, like we see today, basically the interest growth of the fund is paying benefit payments. That's the situation you want to be in. So that's some of the reasons why that statutory minimum funding policy is not really an ideal methodology for funding the fund.
Thank
I
you.
have a question.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as you said, and I've seen this as well, is that a good many, maybe close to a third, if not more, maybe 40% of municipalities are not even anywhere near our level. So it's likely, no guarantee, of course, but it's likely that they're going to extend it past 2040. So how does that, if at all, factored into this?
Yeah, so what that would do then, if they extend it to 2050, is when you get those reports from, it's called the Consolidated Police Board, it's called IPOPIF. They do an actual evaluation report for every pension fund in the state. You're going to see a sharp drop-off in that statutory minimum contribution. That being said, on behalf of the pension board, we would not recommend to follow that policy in determination of the recommended contribution. So what you'll see is, to your point, then you'll see that gap widen even further, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, we're here, the statutory minimum drops off, now you're going to be looking at just a much bigger gap. And ultimately, in the long-term interest of the health of the fund and in the best interest of taxpayers, getting the money in the pension fund, allowing it to accrue interest is really ultimately the best thing. It's pay now or it's pay later, almost like a credit card, right? It's like you could pay the minimum balance on the credit card and just maintain your status and shove a bunch of money into that thing every year, or you can kind of make a contribution that's going to then chip away at the underlying principal, and that's what the nature of the recommended contribution gets at.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Kevin, and the current cost of current service is only 300 grand.
Yeah.
So if we were funding this correctly and historically, our pension contribution will only be 300 grand this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, going back to that exhibit on, was it page 4, I think? That's that first piece that Tom's alluding to, the normal cost, 296. If your pension fund was 100% funded, that second line item would be 0. It wouldn't be 1,289,000. And there's always potential, there's going to be factors that can jog it up or down a little bit, but ultimately, if you were 100% funded, that would be the request this year. It would be about 300,000.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Very good, thanks.
Item B, Chicago Executive Airport update. Presentation by Director Bill Kearns.
Good evening, everyone. And if I could just follow up on one point, I'd like to also say thank you as part of the pension fund. Our police department is changing, and Chief will tell you that lateral transfers are becoming more of a part of how he's able to hire officers. One of the things I would look at if I was an officer changing departments is how funded is the pension fund. Not only that, but that graph of demographics. You may get a lateral transfer that's 40 years old coming in. Again, that's why it's important for us to come annually and say, here's where you're at, because those demographic numbers can change fairly quickly depending on what's going on with our department. Okay. But again, thank you for the work you did helping us fund that last year. I bring you greetings on behalf of the airport also tonight. I was able to see a good many of you at our annual holiday get-together, and those of you that weren't there, we missed you, and we look forward to seeing you next year. Give you a quick operations update. This year's really been a stabilizing period for us. We did approximately 100,000 operations, and we pumped around 8 million gallons of jet fuel. Globally, general aviation is down about 3%. So we stabilized where the rest of the industry seems to be declining a little bit. The administration, federal and Congress, they're preparing at least 2 years of reduced federal spending because there isn't a spending bill in place right now. But there could be opportunities to rewrite some of the regulations governing the national airspace system. We did receive a bid for our next round of sound insulation, which comes in at $1.5 million. It was from SNL, who's previously done this work for us. And we're going to be forwarding those bids onto the FAA and state for approval. And we're looking to start the construction on those homes in late March, early April. And by the way, there are, I think, 7 of our units in Willow Heights condos that are part of that sound insulation program this year. We're working on our budget. Unfortunately, that's going to get pushed into probably, it's late December, early January. I know, Joe, I think you've been in discussion. We did hire L&A also to become our new auditors, and there's, because of the changeover of auditing firms, that got delayed a little bit, but we're confident we're in good hands with that. We're preparing for our 100 years celebration in 2026. We plan on doing some things that really help celebrate that 100-year history of our airport there. The Ramada Inn, most internal items have been removed from the Ramada Inn, with a good deal of that donated to Habitat for Humanity. And I know Sky Harbor is currently working with the building department on the demolition. The quote right now is somewhere about $1.8 million, which includes the asbestos remediation that we have to do, in Ramada there. We've got an environmental assessment that we've partially submitted to the Illinois Department of Aeronautics, and the rest of it will be submitted this week. This is in regard to the runway 624 that we're looking to decommission and so forth. We expect the Illinois Department of Aeronautics to complete the documentation necessary, and we're going ahead and we're moving the tie-down area at the airport, which was right in front of Hawthorne, over to the northeast quadrant of the airport, and we expect that project to begin in May of next year and be completed by September of '25. There's some concrete that we had poured in by Plody as part of our ramp project that we're looking to, we didn't accept that concrete. It didn't meet the strength test that we need for aviation purposes, and that replacement is likely to take place next year. We happen to be working with 845 Design Group on our new office buildings. We're in discussion with 845, who I think is working on the fire district's new project over there. And this would be on Tower Road near Signature Flight Support is where we're looking as a location for that new building. Let's see, we did, as you know, we had a quite successful Run the Runway. We awarded over $5,000 in scholarships to 3 groups. The 99s, which is Women in Aviation, an actual different group called Women in Aviation, and then finally the Chicago Executive Pilots Association. So that's really about all I had in terms of the update for you. Again, welcome to have any questions that you might have.
Any questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We had our proclamation, item 5. So we'll move to item 6, public comments on agenda matters. Deputy Clerk, want to read?
Yes, we have 7 slips submitted.
Okay.
First one, Grace Martinez.
Can I ask a question before you start? Based on the issues that are taking place with regard to the agenda matters themselves, would it be better to discuss whether we're dealing with them before we deal with the?
But I think that they can still speak to their issue.
But they might want to come back and speak again. That's fine.
Yeah, and there's a chance. I've had somebody request that we table the second reading of the. I'm going to say chicken ordinance. I don't mean to say it like that, but the ordinance to January. So this will be, if it's tabled, will come up again at the first meeting in January, first or second meeting in January. So I mean, you're more than welcome to speak now, but if you're going to do it at the time that we're deliberating on it, that's going to be when likely it'll be if it gets tabled. So I guess it's up to you. You can speak to it now, but if you're going to speak to it again and you feel it's more important to say it when we're deliberating about it.
Sure. Or would it be beneficial to hear, so that way it can be taken into consideration
Sure.
more than later on?
Yeah. I just don't want, I just wanted to be forthright with that. Somebody asked about tabling it, and you guys go through all your positions that you want to tell us, and then you're like, well, you would table it, possibly, it might not be tabled, but just wanted to let you know, just in transparency. I didn't want anybody saying that we were tabling this thing after everybody spoke, if it gets tabled, so.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, I feel, at least some of the stuff that I have would be in, sorry, I'm Grace Martinez, by the way. I'm 1213 Highland Drive. Maybe use in consideration onto what your ultimate decision is. So if you hear it now and you have questions, I'm happy to, help with answers and finding those answers for you guys.
And I guess too, what I'd say, does it make sense for the clerk or someone to take some, I know we take notes obviously for our agenda, right? But to maybe take notes and make a few bullet points So then when we do hear this again in January, we can limit the amount of public comment, because we've already heard it tonight, as far as like just being repetitive. So like if we summarize, what we're hearing tonight, and maybe we can scale back on what, like, so do you present this evening to read the same spiel in January? Like, probably doesn't make a lot of sense. So I guess I'm just trying to say we should probably create some kind of like summary of what we heard tonight.
That would be in the minutes. I mean,
Yeah.
we'd get that in the minutes, so maybe you can break that part out
Sounds good.
from the minute, not take it out,
Yeah.
just break it out as a separate item that you can give the council.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys. Thanks for listening to me. I don't know how much of the information from all the zoning board meetings that was presented from the comments that we had. So bear with me if some of it's repetitive. I'd rather have it known than not known. So several of our chicken keeping residents have offered our services to help educate and maintain the peacefulness of the chicken keeping community here in our wonderful city. We helped Mr. Peterson with the draft of the code with regard to coop, maintaining cleanliness, animal welfare, and implementing a 3-strike rule. We have been adamant about striking any sort of quantity, limitations of quantity on birds, and banning the different types of fowl. One of our volunteers visited a few of the homes that had complaints. One of the original complainants was the Kleinschmidts, and she went and visited them. She also visited another one that had a home that had an odor. And when she went to that home, the lady was horrified to realize that her coop smelled. She didn't realize that. She was a nurse that picked up extra shifts, and by just having a conversation with her, she fixed it. She remedied. That's what we are. We're a community. We talk to each other. We try to fix these things when we can versus, going, trying to add extra laws and we can fix it with just a simple conversation versus adding more regulation. All the homes that had the original complaint from that October meeting last year when this all started have no roosters next to them anymore. And this has all been solved without regulations already in place. Why do we need to add these regulations if we can fix it without it? Mr. Peterson even mentioned later over this summer there was a home that came up near the Park District that a rooster would crow whenever the sirens or the whistles went off at the Park District for the pool. The owner didn't realize this either. They had a conversation. Once they did, the rooster's gone. They fixed it. There's ways that we can do it. People can rehome the roosters. They can do a no crow collar. So it's a collar that goes on the bird that kind of like mutes the noise, so if someone wants to keep the bird, they can still have it. You can keep it in the dark until it's time to go outside. They won't crow when it's dark. By including roosters in like a 3-strike ban that's already in the proposal, families can keep their flock protectors, they can keep their pets, they can keep their friends. While roosters can crow early in the morning, not all of them do. The rooster I have, I barely hear him at 8 o'clock every morning because he's such a lazy bum. But that's just mine. And, we don't ban barking dogs. We have noise ordinances to take care of that. So why can't we address nuisance animals as a nuisance animal instead of taking a look at a particular type of animal? I think I mentioned at the other meeting that where I live, there's 5 different homes within a 4-block radius that have roosters. 2 of them have multiple roosters. You guys have had zero complaints from any of us. If you pass this law, if you pass that regulation, you're going to have to rehome at least 7 different roosters, if not more, because I don't know how much these other 2 homes that have the multiples have. But there's 5 different, that's just in 3 blocks. How many are in Prospect Heights? Do we really know? No. You're asking us to register, but if we have to register and we aren't in compliance, how are we going to really want to register? The people that have the roosters are going to keep them hidden. You're not going to encourage us to come out and register our coops and register our birds by passing these type of strict regulations. As far as like the coop size and the quantity, by the regulations that are already set place in the coop, which is what is part of the code that we're proposing and we agree with, it's going to limit the amount of birds that you have. If you have if you have too many birds in your flock, what's going to happen is they're going to start pecking at each other, they're going to start hurting each other, they're going to start being stressed out, they're going to stop laying their eggs. So if someone goes to go and add more chickens or more whatever they have to increase their egg production, they're shooting themselves in their own foot because they're going to get less eggs by the stress on their own birds. When this whole thing started, we started a petition. There's over 1,300 signatures who people who oppose the regulations that are in place. Please listen to us as our citizens. If you guys decide to move forward with it as it's written, there's only 3 complaints a year. So you are alienating decent, law-abiding, caring citizens who just want to raise their animals the way they're raising them. 3 complaints a year can be easily fixed by simply reaching out and connecting the way we did. And, the Chicken Council, we're a free service to you guys. If you hired an expert in this area, you're talking thousands of dollars to the city, and we're offering our services for free. And most of all, if you're going to pass those, you're not only alienating the rest of the city, you're alienating us who want to help the city and the other chicken owners and the non-chicken owners too, because we care about them as well. Thank you.
Katie King.
Hi everyone, Katie King, 8 West Camp McDonald. I will have 4 bullet points if you want to take some notes on that. I thought it was important that I come up here and speak as a non-chicken owner, but a pro-chicken person. It's important to me that we don't assume that non-chicken owners are automatically going to be rah-rah hooray for any sort of bans or limits. Quite honestly, I love where I live, where I can hear roosters in my backyard, and then I can walk to Walgreens for anything that I need. I really like that combination, and I don't think that I could get that if we decide that we want to change our regulations to look like a cookie cutter suburb. That's important to me. Second point, I am one person. I eat eggs every single day. I buy large eggs because I eat so much. Generally, I have about 17 a week. And I don't have chickens, but imagine if I did. Imagine if I had an entire family who ate eggs. Again, I don't think that limiting the amount of producing birds that a family could have is really the best thing for people in our city. One point I thought was also interesting is, so I agree that having regulations on coop location, coop size, that makes sense to me. I wonder if we are able to enforce the location of coops, that might take care of some of the complaints that we've gotten. We might have coops that are currently non-compliant, too close to neighbors, and that's why they're having complaints. If we're able to solve that, that might get rid of some of the complaints that have come up. And lastly, similar to what Genevieve just said, I work in finance. I can't help but want to see the analysis behind how much extra work would be added for any additional regulations, what the current workload of the board is, and will this require another headcount to manage? Again, I would rather us spend our resources on something that is more in line with what the majority of citizens want, as opposed to what we are assuming the majority is. So that's all. Thank you.
Next is Justina, Kozjelniak. Okay.
Hello. I'd first like to thank Genevieve, Nikki, and Grace, who have done so much over the last year, working with you guys and working with Dan on the proposals. My name is Justina Kozjelniak. I live at 3 Alton Road. This is my son Harrison. He was at the last meeting with his dad. I stand before you today not just as a resident of our town, but someone who understands the value of traditions, our community, and yes, our roosters. My husband and I and our 3 boys are the proud owners of a flock of chickens as well as a rooster named Leonardo. I'm here today to voice my objection to a rooster ban. I grew up in Mount Prospect and used to drive through Prospect Heights on my way to Hersey High School every day. One of my most vivid memories during my commute to school is the awe I felt while driving through Prospect Heights. Even then, as a 16 and 17-year-old, I had the vision and dream that I would one day raise my family in Prospect Heights. When my husband and I started to talk about where we wanted to purchase a home, I put Prospect Heights as number 1 on our list, and number 2 and number 3. Here I am now, 20 years later, living that dream. Prospect is charming. It's not like like the other suburbs around us, and part of that charm is that you can come out on a warm or even crisp morning and hear roosters in the background. I've spoken with countless Prospect Heights residents over the course of this last year who talk about that rooster echo. It's a nature sound that is now a part of this town's identity. There are emotional and psychological benefits to it. For many of us, including myself, the sound of a rooster crowing is comforting. Let's address the noise concern, which is at the heart of this proposed ban. I understand this nature sound might not be for everyone, particularly if you're living next to an overzealous rooster, and I'm sympathetic to that. In scenarios like this, the owners can take several measures to mitigate early morning crowing. Like us, our rooster, Leonardo, lives in a coop that is insulated with 6-inch foam, so if he starts early, you can't hear him. We do not let him out of the coop until at least 8. At that time, you can hear a whole lot more living outside your door, such as dogs, lawnmowers, bird chirping outside your window, and the hum of urban living. Instead of a ban, I'd like to propose that we investigate more humane solutions like soundproofing our coops like we have, or rooster collars that respect both the rights of the homeowners to peace and the natural behaviors of these animals. Furthermore, if the noise is a concern in some cases, which is why is it not already being addressed with the regulations that already exist in this town? It appears to me that this council has a vision for the future of this town to echo more of Arlington Heights and Mount Prospect. I fear you are not taking into consideration that people literally move here because you are not that. We should be proud of who we are and stop pretending like we're someone else. I want to close out today by reminding you that very recently people voted against government overreach and wasteful spending on a much larger scale. What you are proposing today will be a waste of our hard-earned tax dollars, and the regulations are unnecessary if you enforce the laws already in place. Thank you. If it's okay with this council, my son Harrison would like to say something as well.
My name is Harrison. I am in 1st grade. I don't want you to ban my rooster. I think you should leave things the way they are. And not change anything. Thank you.
Next, Lynn Schumacher.
Hi, I'm Lynn Schumacher. I live on Wilder Drive in Country Gardens, and I am asking you to vote for the ordinance the way it stands by limiting the chickens and banning the roosters. I have experience living next door to people with chickens, fought them for 2 years to get rid of their roosters, put up with all that stuff. So I feel I'm a valid person on the other side, even though normally I get interrupted or something when I'm up here. The chicken owners say there have been no complaints or limited complaints, or now we're hearing 3 complaints a year about the chickens and roosters. However, we know there have been calls to 911 regarding the noise and the smell. I've certainly called several times, so I know that what they're saying is not true. The chicken owners say that their neighbors are not bothered by the chickens and roosters, but most neighbors will not say anything because they don't want to cause any trouble or any issues in the neighborhood. When they start saying things, it's because it's gotten out of hand. The chicken owners have said that roosters only crow in the morning. This is a statement that is totally false, as they crow all day. And even if they did only crow in the morning, why would that be okay for your surrounding neighbors? is simply not okay. It's rude. The chicken owners say that we should do something about dogs barking, which is worse. Yes, we should have a way of dealing better with dogs barking, but the focus of this vote is chickens and roosters, not dogs, and that's what we need to think about right now. The chicken owners brought in a real estate agent, and it seems like she was trying to tell us that we have to allow chickens and roosters in order to be able to sell our houses in this city. I find that offensive because I think our beautiful city has way more to offer than a place to raise farm animals. The chicken owners like to make it sound like they are the majority opinion, and there have only been a couple people like me complaining. The reality is that unless you live next door to a yard full of chickens and roosters, you really wouldn't care about any of this. Unless you are in your backyard on a beautiful summer day, entertain friends, family, or just trying to enjoy the quiet day on your deck, and you are interrupted by chickens clucking, squawking, or roosters crowing, you really wouldn't understand what all this is about. It's nice to say, oh yeah, we love the chickens, and I would have loved chickens before. I would have never had any idea how bad it could be. The chicken owners say the current system of calling 911 solves the noise problem. It does not. I've tried it for over 2 years. It doesn't work. We need enforceable rules to make the chicken owners accountable instead of putting the responsibility on the neighbors of the chicken owners to continually call and complain and hope that when a car comes to check on a complaint, the rooster has not worn himself out for a while and is quiet. And now the process starts all over again. The current system does not work. We need enforceable rules. Please support this ordinance as it stands. We are not asking to ban chickens. We realize Prospect Heights is a nice little community for all. Just put a limit on how many are allowed. The less chickens, the less noise and stench. Ban the roosters totally. There is no place for them in our peaceful community. They're loud and obnoxious, and even the collars would not help. There is a choice here. Vote yes for this ordinance as is and protect our community and all its different lifestyles. Or, if you allow roosters and do not limit the number of chickens, you are voting to turn our beautiful and unique suburban community into a more rural, farmland city to appease less than 100 chicken owners. I might not have that exact, but enough. There's not that many. Thank you for your time, and thank you for understanding what I've been through living next door to chicken owners. And you can go back and look at all the documentation if you want to hear all about it. I appreciate your time, and I'm not being rude. I have to leave. My granddaughter's in for the holidays, and I'm going to go back home to see her. So I'm not being rude to anybody, but I am going to leave. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay.
Thank you. Next is Genevieve Sherritt.
Hi folks, Genevieve Sherritt, 5 Alton Road, Ward 2. I am reiterating my position and that of many others here today that the council should strike 2 things from the proposed ordinance: the ban on roosters, turkeys, geese, and other fowl, and the fixed number limit on birds. While it is true that there are towns that use bans and fixed numbers, it is also true that there are a lot of towns and counties that are not doing it this way. On this issue, we believe that it would be fairest and simplest and best to align ourselves with Cook County, the City of Chicago, Barrington Hills, Palos Park, and many other local communities that do not ban roosters or other fowl and do not impose a fixed number limit. There are unincorporated communities all around us, including parts of Des Plaines, Niles, Park Ridge, Glenview, Northbrook, Northfield, and so on, where residents are free to keep roosters and hens of any species, so long as they are respectful of the animals and of their neighbors. The guideline that animals must be kept in no greater number than what can be housed humanely and cleanly without creating a nuisance situation is enough. The laws that we currently have about sound, nuisance, smells, and animals at large are more than enough. The new proposed ordinances specifying registration, inspections, permits, fees, fines, minimum distances from neighboring residences, maximum sizes of coops and runs, and a 3 strikes and you're out rule are more than enough. Now, we have spoken to a lot of the council, and some of you did ask us if we must put a system of numerical limits in place, what makes sense and what would be fact-based. While we do reiterate that no limit is best, this morning we did distribute a short and simple veterinary chart of square footage space guidelines for various types of poultry. The ordinance could read that fowl may be kept in no greater number than what can be housed in the shelter space to which they have continuous access, as calculated using the chart's numbers. Those guidelines range from 1/2 foot to 6 feet per bird. They are provided by the veterinarians who wrote the professional edition of the MERG Veterinary Manual for backyard poultry, not commercial poultry, and the U.S. State Extension offices. With Dan's proposed restriction on coop and run space, there is no possible combination here that would ever get high enough to create a space issue on even our smallest single-family lots. This system is based on science. It is enforceable. It gives residents the ability to mix and match. It keeps people from overcrowding their birds, which actually the fixed 20 bird limit does not help with that. It allows zoning to easily calculate based on their everyday language of building square footage, and it would help to ensure happy, healthy birds, which is what keeps them quiet and clean. So if numbers are non-negotiable, let it be those, the ones written by professionals. Hopefully, we won't decide to go there, but there it is. What's very troubling to me is that if the rooster and other fowl ban and the fixed number limit are left in, the law gives the residents 12 months to eliminate extra birds. And I have to be very clear about that. That is a death sentence. There are insufficient rescue options for fowl. This is also, I believe, a violation of personal property rights. These birds were obtained legally and in good faith, and they live in the only homes that they have ever known. The vast majority of them, if not all of them, are causing no nuisance whatsoever. In fact, they are helping to provide healthy food and education and engagement and enrichment to our community and its children. So if you leave the ordinance as it is, you will also have to have a plan for communicating to your constituents why you voted away their birds' lives. Many of you on the council have told me that you don't really have any previous exposure to chickens or didn't know before this issue was raised to the council that so many of us did have them. And this is a testament to how unobtrusive fowl really are. And it's a clear statement that this is not the time to go from 0 to 100. The other day, we even, upon request, sent a council member a Pinterest board full of pictures of Prospect Heights coops and properties to illustrate just how unobtrusive and beautiful they are. The lawns are nice, the properties are clean, the buildings are minimal, the neighbors are happy or even oblivious. We simply cannot plan for every eventuality or worst case scenario. Alderman Cameron did say to us the other day, what we do here is going to stick, and I couldn't agree more with that. We can always add, but we can't as easily take away. So let's not get too carried away with how we take this next step. Over the last year, 14 months, some of you have shared with me how proud you are of the things that make Prospect Heights unique, and I agree. Some believe that we should try to be more like suburbs such as Schaumburg and Lake Forest and Arlington Heights. I say we need to ditch that inferiority complex. We are different, and whether you like that, regardless of how you feel about things like well water and sidewalks and street lights and large lots or any of that, we are significantly different. We are that special little rural suburb, and we do need to reflect the interests of those who chose this place because of its differences and not in spite of them. They too are your constituents. We found the secret sauce for capturing the pluses of both city and country without suffering from most of the drawbacks. Okay, I'll just close by saying I think it's totally acceptable to accept some differences in our neighbors. We give a little, we get a little, and we can grow, we can evolve and change, but we should not be leaving each other behind. Thanks very much.
Next is Nikki Moylan.
Hi everyone, thank you. Nikki Moylan, 108 West Kenilworth. I just want to start by thanking Alderman Dolick, Alderman Dash, Alderman Morgan Adams, and Alderman Cameron for speaking with my chicken colleague Genevieve and I over the past week about this important issue. I know the four of you took time out of your day to speak with us, and we really appreciate that. A common theme that I noticed in each of our conversations has been the pride that you feel in our community and your commitment to listening to the residents of Prospect Heights. You've each expressed how difficult this issue is, which I appreciate and I think we all appreciate, and it's clear why. This is a hot button topic because it affects so many of us, particularly because it impacts our families directly. We've already established that there's nothing in our city code currently addressing chicken keeping, and I agree, and many of us agree, that it's important that we establish clear guidelines. I think we're all on the same page about that. However, I also believe that we should approach this issue very carefully and take baby steps towards remediating it. We don't need to rush into adding too much regulation too quickly, as this could disproportionately affect a number of our citizens. It would be very easy to follow the lead of some of the cities around us, simply ban roosters and impose strict limits on the number of fowl allowed. Easy peasy, right? But I ask, why should we do that? Why should we take the easy route when it doesn't help our citizens? Just because some, and the key word is some, cities have made some of these changes doesn't mean that it's the right choice for Prospect Heights. In Prospect Heights, we pride ourselves on being unique. I did not pre-read some of the speeches that have come before me, and I think it's really great how we're all talking about the uniqueness of our city. We have a community that values thoughtful, balanced decision-making, and we need to ensure that our policies reflect that. The number of complaints the city receives each year is minimal. I know that Ms. Schumacher had to leave, and the reason we know that is because not only was it stated in City Council in the October of 2023 meeting, we did FOIA requests on this information. We were like trying to find the complaints and see where they were coming from so that we can address them, and they are truly minimal. I don't believe that this warrants such a drastic shift in our current approach. I believe we can take a more measured approach, and again, we can always add regulations down the road as needed. In light of that, I really urge you to consider the proposal, again, minus those two things, minus the rooster and fowl ban, and minus the number limits, because there are great things in the current proposal regarding structure size, cleanliness requirements, noise ordinances, and the revocation clause. My chicken coop is right next, I mean not right next to, but our neighbors often have bonfires, like their fire pit is the closest thing to our chicken coop, and they entertain all the time without hearing my chickens. And I mean, I've been at their house, I can't hear my chickens, so I know from that perspective as well. Happy chickens are not noisy. So again, the regulations that are already in this proposal, I think will cover a lot of what Ms. Schumacher stated as issues that she was having previously. And again, I think it all comes down to responsible fowl ownership, and that's what we all want, and that's what this proposal ensures. I also want to highlight the many residents who have expressed no issues with chicken keeping and who are committed to keeping Prospect Heights the gem of a city that it is. We enjoy the freedom to have chickens, and we appreciate how our community has operated thus far. We can add a little regulation and still keep everyone happy. We're not ignoring people who have real problems. We simply recognize that there are already safeguards in place for these people. We don't need to compare ourselves to what other cities are doing. Prospect Heights is unique, like I said, and the majority of us like it that way. We have larger lots, private wells, and a more country-like feel, which is what brought my family specifically to Prospect Heights and many others here. We told our real estate agent we didn't want to see towns that didn't allow chickens, so Prospect Heights was top of our list. Instead of trying to copy neighboring cities, we should lean into what makes us different. We value good dialogue with our neighbors and city code that makes sense for our community, and I trust that by continuing to work together, we can craft a solution that reflects these values and supports the needs of all of our residents. And with that being said, before I close, I don't know where the time is, I did want to kind of ask, in terms of Ms. Schumacher, she has spoke at multiple meetings here, and if she is truly experiencing all these issues with a neighbor, I just really hope that someone is looking into this for her before, I mean, again, we have noise ordinances and stuff, and I just hope that she's not just coming to all these meetings for a year with no one helping her. So, because again, we don't want bad eggs either. So, thank you.
Last is Christine Scheel.
Hello. I brought my glasses this time and my notes, so I can do a better job.
So I sent this email to a lot of you here, and I didn't hear back from most people, which is disappointing. I really would hope that I would get some confirmation that some people got it. Matthew, thank you for saying that you at least got my letter. So I'm going to read it. I might cut out some parts to be brief. But dear Prospect Heights elected officials, as a resident of Prospect Heights, I'm very disappointed with the chicken process. It really feels like it's been a sham from the beginning. At the very first meeting, Dan Peterson said that he'd been directed to explore the issue and that it was entirely possible that no action might be needed. As the process unfolded, it's been clear to all that there was an agenda from the start to enact a strict poultry law or something, and it seems like it's already been decided on. Doing nothing was never really an option. This made the entire process feel a little bit like a dog and pony show. There were a lot of meetings in which many, many residents came and spoke. All these fine people gave so much of their personal time to come here and write letters and put together thoughts to share. And then the regulations that were written were just copying a handful of other towns without regard to what a majority of the people who spoke want. And I think that's really important. As I said before, we moved here specifically for a homesteading type lifestyle and the ability to raise chickens, ducks, quails, turkeys as we liked. For 25 years, we've never had a problem with a complaint. No one has ever complained about my yard, and I've never complained about a neighbor's yard, except for regarding a loud dog, which was successfully handled with the noise ordinance that we already have. People are drawn to our town to buy property because of the big lots that lend themselves to homesteading activities such as poultry rearing and gardening. Placing unnecessary restrictions will reduce our property values by taking away the very things that make our community unique, while also infringing on the legitimate use of our private property, which is why we purchased property here in the first place. And I think that's a strong message that you hear from everybody speaking. There's one very vocal resident who speaks against chickens at every meeting and has spoken at length about the many ongoing issues she has with her neighbor, including parties, loud music, loud cars, unsightly car repairs, and chickens. This is a situation where she has latched onto chickens as a way to get revenge on her neighbor for all the perceived wrongs in their relationship. Please note that even she admits the neighbor no longer has a rooster and has less than 20 chickens. Why should I or anybody else in our community be penalized for her ability to get along with her neighbor? For many years, I was a humane investigator for the Illinois Department of Agriculture, investigating complaints regarding the care of hoofed animals. The vast majority of complaints I investigated were unfounded due to the fact that the animals were fine, but a neighbor was trying to make trouble for the animal owner because they didn't get along. That's the truth. I believe there's some sort of verbiage in the proposed new regulations regarding 3 strikes, complaints, and you have to get rid of your chickens. I strenuously object to an ordinance that gives my neighbors the ability to influence my right to engage in lawful activities on my property by making false complaints. Can you imagine a 3 strikes rule regarding barking dogs? Then you shouldn't imagine one for chickens. The arbitrary limit on 20 birds completely disregards relevant facts about poultry keeping, such as the fact that poultry come in all sizes, and nuisances such as noise and odor are caused by the same squalor conditions that cause noise and odor in other situations, such as garbage pile-up, hoarding, unattended dogs, wild parties, etc., etc. We have laws already for those things, and we shouldn't penalize good poultry owners, which is most of them, needlessly when you already have laws for those situations. Neither do I support a rooster ban. We've had several over the years, and we've never had a complaint. Roosters, like dogs, come in all sizes too. Some crow a lot, some barely crow at all, just like dogs. There are lots of options for a rooster owner who loves their rooster who grows. You can bring him inside, you can insulate your coop, you can put him in the basement overnight, you can put a crow collar on. I know there's been some conversation about crow collars and how effective they are. I can tell you from experience that crow collars don't stop crowing, but they do reduce the volume, the duration, and the frequency of the crows in many roosters. They are an effective tool in many situations. Chickens don't fly, so when a yard is fenced, they should be able to wander around degrubbing while protected by a rooster. Roosters protect from predators such as hawks, raccoons, possums, owls. If you are going to let your roosters wander around your yard, which if you have a fenced yard, you should be able to do, just like you can let your dog wander around your yard. You really need a rooster to protect your chickens from hawks. Also, roosters in particular are fun, fascinating companions, just like dogs. I really urge you to get to know one at some point. I promise you'll be surprised. They're really interesting animals. If you really want an ordinance for chicken keeping, please scrap this and go back to the residents with a real good faith effort to make something that works for most, instead of something that feels like it was already decided on before the process even began. Just for context, please know that I work in agriculture and have recognized expertise in the field of poultry keeping. I've overseen the care of thousands of birds in my career. Your residents who have spoken
for the chicken, against the chicken ordinance have solid chicken knowledge and are right on most of their points. I urge you to support them and listen to them. The person who wrote the ordinance doesn't really have any factual knowledge about chicken keeping, and the ordinance should be disregarded. Thank you for your time.
That's all. Okay. Okay. Item 7, we don't have a consent agenda, so we can go right to old business, which is item A, ordinance O-2413, staff memo and ordinance for consideration of text amendments to Title 5, zoning, Chapter 2, definitions, Chapter 3, general provisions, and Chapter 6, adding keeping fowl chickens as a permitted special use, and Title 9, police regulations, Chapter 1, animal control of the city code pertaining to keeping fowl chickens in the R1 single-family district.
I'm going to move to table this reading.
We have a motion to table.
Second.
We have a second. Roll call.
Alderman Cameron.
Aye.
Alderman Anderson.
Aye.
Alderman Morgan Adams.
Aye.
Alderman Dash.
Aye.
Alderman Dolick. Aye.
Motion passes. This will come up, I don't know if it'll be the first meeting or second meeting in January again. Part of the reason for this, just for explanation and transparency, is this went on for a year. We make a point to not get involved with the ZBA to keep us completely apart from each other. So we've only had this ordinance in front of us for 2 weeks. So the reason it's being postponed or has been requested to be tabled is so that we can get answers from Dan with interpreting what's been brought to us from the ZBA. So that's what's going on right now. So it could be as soon as the first meeting in January, maybe the second, but it'll be, you'll see it and you will know, so.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Will we ever hear you guys talking about it?
Yeah, when it actually goes, when we actually have it in front of us to vote on it, there'll be probably a long discussion
You guys
about
will
it.
talk about prior to the vote, like a meeting prior?
No,
With
we
the
won't
Open
have-
Meetings Act, we can't
Right.
do that.
So, yeah.
We could talk about it tonight. I mean, if there were questions, we could certainly ask them. Yeah, that would not be.
I just didn't know if that ever happened.
Yeah.
Like, if you guys ever talked amongst yourself, or if you ever asked us questions or
Yeah.
anything.
We can only talk amongst ourselves with 2 people or less, because we'd be violating like an open meeting act. So, yeah, so that would be on our own, but we could ask questions tonight if anyone on the council had any.
So we will let you know, we probably can put something on the website, Peter, as far as, even before, yeah, the e-news, say that the meeting is coming up, and you'll know it. It won't be a last-minute thing where we're trying to keep people from coming. We'll be as transparent to the point where it'll be too much. That's my
And even at the next meeting, there's no guarantee we'll vote. So.
Right. But if it's on there, I would come. Okay, if you see it on the agenda,
I'm not
come.
saying stay home.
If it's not on the agenda, we can't put it on that day or what, just here, so something couldn't happen like that. So if you got any questions about that process, ask them, because I want to be transparent. I've been doing this for 20 years, so I know how all these things work as far as how things go from, the ZBA to us and then actually get voted on. I know you guys don't see that all the time, so I don't want you to think that we're doing something that's not normal. So if you have any questions about that process and how it gets passed and when it gets voted on, by all means, ask now if you do. But that's what'll happen.
What materials are you provided from all the past meetings? Do we need to send you anything that has been previously submitted?
I have, we get, here, I'll show you what I have. This is my chicken binder, which is all the testimony from every ZBA meeting, the emails, and everything else. So we do have it, believe me. We're not doing this in a vacuum. We're just doing it on motion. It's something that everybody takes very seriously. So that's where we're at. And if you guys want to stay, you can. Watch how the sausage is made, but that's up to you. So we'll go on to the next item under old business is the approval of our levies. If the council's okay, I'm going to do an omnibus motion to approve the tax levies. Is there any objection to that?
No.
No.
That's B through H?
It'll be item B through H.
That's fine.
So I will look for a motion to approve in an omnibus motion, item B through item H under old business.
So move, Morgan Adams.
Second, Anderson.
We have a motion and we have a second. Roll call, please.
Alderman Cameron.
Aye.
Alderman Anderson.
Aye.
Alderman Morgan Adams.
Aye.
Alderman Dash.
Aye.
Alderman Dolick.
Aye.
Motion passes. All right. Item I, this was tabled from the last meeting and it has to do with the agenda. So it's the agenda for the 2025 City Council regular meeting calendar. This was tabled. Are you good with it?
Yes, I'm good.
So we can pass it as is, or
Yes.
it was amended?
It was amended, yeah.
Okay. So we need a motion to approve the 2025 City Council regular meeting calendar as submitted.
So moved.
Anderson.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Roll call, please.
Alderman Cameron.
Aye.
Alderman Anderson.
Aye.
Alderman Morgan Adams.
Aye.
Alderman Dash.
Aye.
Alderman Dolick.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item 9, which I'm assuming you're here for. A request to waive first reading on ordinance 02431, staff memo and ordinance exempting all school and park district employers within Prospect Heights from the Cook County Paid Leave Act. This is a request for the waiver of the first reading. We need a motion to approve.
So move, Morgan Adams.
Second, Cameron.
We have a motion and we have a second. Roll call, please.
Alderman Cameron.
Aye.
Alderman Anderson.
Aye.
Alderman Morgan Adams.
Aye.
Alderman Dash.
Aye.
Alderman Dolick.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item B, ordinance 02431, a staff memo and ordinance exempting all school and park district employers within Prospect Heights from the Cook County Paid Leave Act. This is the second reading for approval. Need a motion to approve?
So move, Morgan Adams.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions on this? And maybe just for everybody else out there watching this and that they'll hear about it, maybe Joe, you can give us a 30-second thumbnail sketch of why we're doing this.
Be brief, baby, be brief. Cook County passed a paid leave ordinance that is applicable to government. The city opted out earlier, but it's also applicable to school and park districts. But it's in conflict with state of Illinois labor regulations. So it's a question of which is applicable. Working with Attorney Hess, and thankfully he's very, very quick on this. It came up quickly. We thought Cook County was going to amend the ordinance earlier. They did not, so they fell into the city's lap. But what we're asking for is an ordinance that provides that exemption so that our school and park districts can follow, as they have previously, as the law exists, state of Illinois labor regulations for this. The impact is great. Estimates from the school district is $100,000 a year. A lot of part-time seasonal employees. Park district similarly, and that estimated annual cost, additional annual cost is $50,000 per year. So this is it's for all of our citizens, but I think it's particularly helpful to our school and park districts, and it's certainly as a staff recommendation that we pass it so that we maintain compliance with existing state law. We're not circumventing anything. We're just following state law. Is that fair? Okay.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second already on the floor, so can we get a roll call?
Alderman Cameron.
Aye.
Alderman Anderson.
Aye.
Alderman Morgan Adams.
Aye.
Alderman Dash.
Aye.
Alderman Dolick.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Item C, Resolution R2446, a staff memo and resolution authorizing the purchase of an internet firewall for City Hall in the amount of $10,876.83 to be installed by the city's IT contractor, Dekind Computer Consultants. We need a motion to approve.
So moved, Anderson.
Second, Cameron.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Alderman Cameron.
Aye.
Alderman Anderson.
Aye.
Alderman Morgan Adams.
Aye.
Alderman Dash.
Aye.
Alderman Dolick.
Aye.
Motion approved. Item D, ordinance 02432, staff memo and ordinance amending various sections of the city code related to Title I, Chapter 6, Section 7I, powers and duties as it relates to city administrator purchasing authority for Prosper Heights. This is the first reading, so there will be no vote on this, but Joe, would you like to give us a...
Certainly. Our purchasing authorization, from what we could tell, was established 20 years or more ago. Obviously, items have increased in price. It's of particular concern in emergency situations, excavations, sewer, water main breaks. Very easily, when we bring in a contractor, we easily exceed $10,000. So it doesn't change our procedures. We still have the same oversight. We still have the same bidding requirements. But this firewall is an example. It's touch and go. It's been touch and go for the last week or so. But because it's a $10,000 limit, we couldn't do it on our own. So we had to wait for the next council meeting. And I think it's mainly that since the purchasing limit was established 20 years ago, obviously things have increased significantly in price.
And what's the new proposed limit, Joe?
The 25,000, right?
Yes, thank you.
Is there anything, I'm trying to think how to phrase this, because I know this came up several years ago, I'm sure you remember.
Right.
And we were not in favor of increasing it. I understand emergencies. Is there anything that's written into it to say that items would still come before the city council in non-emergency situations that are less than 25,000? Or does it just give you that blanket authority to say, well, if it's within this price range, we don't need to discuss it or present it to city council for approval?
Well, there's also, first of all, expenditures have to be approved by the budget.
Mm-hmm.
But there are some things that aren't budgeted, such as this firewall. It's an emergency situation.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to it.
Yeah,
I'm just thinking, are there any safeguards, or does it just mean?
I think there's an element you're going to have to trust us a little bit. Okay. I think there are times,
and I think we do.
Yeah, but I think certainly some of these things we just can't wait for next council meeting.
Yeah,
but certainly items that we go out for requests for proposals for, budgeted items. The trouble is I can't right now say what's an emergency. Some things are budgeted, some things, but certainly we're asking this for emergency purchases.
I understand.
Bob, you might have a sense of this from the finance department, from
other communities around. I think that the purchasing authority is around that amount too, for city members to go ahead and make a purchase without getting authorization from the board right away. Community I came from, I think, was higher than 10,000, where it gave directors the ability to buy something that's out of the ordinary. And again, like Joe was saying, I think with the emergency part of it, you'll see it. They could talk to you about it, and the following meeting, make the purchase, and just bring it off, hey, we have to make this purchase. It was at the 25,000 limit, so you're advised of it.
And this is not staff, this is just the city administrator. This is not, Peter couldn't run out and buy something, or the chief couldn't say, hey, I need a new car, I'm gonna go, this is the city administrator, so it's...
New car before you retire, huh?
Two signatures on it too, so if the police chief wants to go and buy something for 25,000, he can't do it without notifying the city administrator, hey, I gotta make a purchase here.
Yeah.
And if I just may, originally we were talking to double it to 20,000. We spoke with the mayor, and the mayor mentioned 25. And the reason why 25 is so special is that's actually our limit for RFPs, for requests for proposals. So there was some thought behind it going, instead of just doubling it, going to 25,000. And they're absolutely right. Any purchase we have is it's a 2-signature proposal. But again, this is not for myself or Dan or the Cap or Mark. We can't just run out and buy something for $25,000. This is us presenting it to the city administrator, to Joe, and Joe has the authority to approve that.
Yeah, I appreciate the clarifications. Thank you.
So, okay, we'll move on to item 10, staff and elected officials and commission reports. We'll start on my right. Peter, any staff members, any reports?
No report, but happy holidays to everybody. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Kwanzaa.
Bob? Dan?
Some good news for Ward 3 and the shopping center on Elmhurst Road that suffered the fire last year that lost half of its businesses. We've approved 3 new businesses going in this month. Z Salon, which is taking the place of one of the salons that did not come back. We did also get a bubble tea. It's going to be Love Boba Tea, and they're going in, and the students at the high school are going to love it. And then we also have a new Mexican restaurant that will be on next month's agenda going in there. And then the owners of Hot Breads have got a new franchise and changed their name and go in a different direction. So we're starting to see life back at the mall, and which is a good thing.
Good. Chief?
I have nothing but happy holidays to all of our residents and staff.
Deputy Clerk?
But
Nothing? Joe?
No, thank you.
Elected on the right. Danielle? No?
Just happy and safe holidays to everyone.
Wendy?
Same thing, happy and safe holidays to everybody.
I don't have any report, but happy holidays to everybody. But I will say, thank God Dunkin' Donuts is open in Ward 5. So just want everybody to know, we're by McDonald's, over by the airport. McDonald's is officially open. They actually have a sign that says Prospect Heights in there, which is actually really cool. So it's right next to the McDonald's, right by the airport. So if anybody wants to go, take a look at it.
Happy holidays to everyone. I started making my famous pumpkin bread yesterday, and so I hope everybody has a great holiday.
Thank you. My only report is I ate is it Vasco's? I always get it mixed up because they have multiple names, but
Vasco's Piri Piri.
Very good. Very good. And one thing I'm able to talk about with a lot of experience, that's eating, so. I did like it a lot, so thank you.
I will be talking with the owners tomorrow. I have a meeting with them. It had to get rescheduled due to last week, and they are still talking about a grand opening.
And they have a new sign.
Yeah.
I like the sign.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a sign for that little shopping.
Yeah, they put up a nice little pylon sign, and it's very tasteful, classy. It shows all the businesses, and then feather flags will be going soon.
Okay.
Yeah, right next to Manny's sign out front of,
Yeah, but I can't touch it. That's a real estate sign.
Yeah.
But.
All right, so we need
Oh,
approval
man.
of the warrants. Will the Deputy Clerk please read the expenditures and wire payments?
Yes. The approval expenditures for December 9th include a total of $499,079.13. There's a wire payment on November 29th for payroll in the amount of $191,798.06. And that brings a total warrant of $690,877.19.
Need a motion to approve?
So moved, Anderson.
Second, Cameron.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Alderman Cameron?
Aye.
Alderman Anderson?
Aye.
Alderman Morgan Adams?
Aye.
Alderman Dash?
aye.
Alderman Dolick?
Aye.
Motion passes. Any public comment on non-agenda matters? Anybody? No?
Happy holidays.
We have no executive session, so no action will be required, so I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, Anderson.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.